Namaste. Thank you, TEDx and GGSIPU for having me here. Activist, entrepreneur. Actually, I'm both, and an accidental one at that. And today I'm going to talk about how I became an accidental activist entrepreneur and how me and my garbage sisterhood are trying to create a cleaner and greener world. So 25 years back, I was a student like you. All I wanted was a fat paycheck and global travel. By 2010, I'd achieved both and had become a single adoptive mom. Life was suddenly at a slow pace. And a friend moved into my community and she said, when we were in New York, we were segregating our waste. Why don't we do it now? So be careful whom you're friends with because you don't know what rabbit holes they'll take you down, right? But I said sure, and I rounded up a few more friends. And together we started doing research on how can we rescue part of our waste from going to dumps and landfills. I'd also seen a connection between every time that the garbage was being burnt in the neighborhood and my daughter's falling sick. So we all got together and found that there were actually 4 communities in Bangalore that were already segregating their waste. We learned from them and we decided to implement in our community of 540 homes. We'd been told and we'd heard it so often, right? In India, people don't care for environment. India is a dirty country. So we didn't expect too much of a response. We thought maybe we'll get 30, 40 more households to do it in a community of 540 homes. We were so pleasantly surprised. We found that when we built a good system, we put a process behind it, spent effort in education, 70% of the people wanted to do the right thing. It did take them more effort and they were willing to invest that to do the right thing. And that's a learning for life, which we've used often in our journey. So we implemented the system. It was complex. We were only segregating dry waste: paper, plastic, metal, glass, e-waste, cardboard. But we were glad some of it was getting rescued. We called ourselves Green Buds. Natural name, right? As few of us moved out of the community, they took the learning and they implemented it in their communities too. Before we know it, some other communities wanted to implement it too. And we suddenly had a whole bunch of us in our neighborhood who were segregating our waste. We came together, called ourselves Kasamukta Belandur, which means garbage-free Belandur. We started working together, improving the system, making it better, looking at what were the challenges, and continuously improving it to make it easier for residents to do the right thing. During this process, we found that while we were segregating, we found the waste pickers, the army we had teamed up with, and they're the ones who actually rescue tons and tons of dry waste and move it to recycling, were actually mixing the waste. When we spoke to them, we found that a simple bottle like this is 3 grades of plastic. There is a label, there is a bottle, and there is a cap. They were separating our dry waste into 72 different categories. We also found that unlike US, where 80% of the waste was actually dry waste, in India, 60 to 75% of our waste was actually wet waste. It bears, right? In US, I would get pomegranates in a plastic box. I would eat it and only thing left would be a plastic box. Whereas in India, I buy a pomegranate in its nature provided shell. And what is left after eating the pomegranate is just the peels or the wet waste. So we redesigned and came together with a simple thing. We also did a 80-20 rule. It says that 80% of the problems can be solved with 20% of the effort. 20% of the problems take 80% of the effort. So there was sanitary pads, diapers, construction waste, there was medical waste, there was broken glass. We said, let's club it all into a third category called reject. Let it continue to go to a landfill as long as we can rescue the rest and give it a proper destination so that it doesn't go to a landfill. So that's what it became. It became 2 bin and a bag. A bag because you can't put a pizza box in a 8-liter bucket. Not the packaging that you receive with most of your e-commerce today. So that's why we replaced the bin with a bag for the dry waste. Soon, more and more communities were segregating. Our boxes were getting clogged by sending all those emails and all the pamphlets out. So we created a website. It connected us with similar initiatives across the city, and the movement really took off. Not just in Bangalore, we started getting calls, and we would just teach them how to do it from across the India. So Gurgaon, Pune, Mumbai, smaller towns Uti started adopting it. Now that we had started segregating and it was successful, what next? Right? We looked at the biggest category, which was wet waste. We tried composting at home, but I found I was a failure. So did some of them. Some people succeeded, some people failed. But we wanted a larger scale solution. So we teamed up with a municipality and found that there was a facility which could process our wet waste. We started sending our wet waste there. Around this time, I also teamed up with a citywide group called SWMRT, or Solid Waste Management Roundtable, which had volunteers from across the city working towards what else but managing waste responsibly. We launched a campaign so that people can start composting their waste. Simple reason, municipalities still had to catch up with us. We had started receiving complaints from citizens, I'm segregating, but municipality is mixing the waste. So we told people, just don't give them the waste. Just compost your wet waste at home. Give your dry waste to the waste pickers and let the municipality take the balance 5 to 15% of it which is left. We also found that there was a group in city, a very vibrant group, which was growing their own food. And we found that when people were growing their own food, the tone changed. There was beautiful pictures of the flowers they'd grown. There was beetroots that they had managed to grow. Somebody had shown how to grow spinach so easily. So we decided to create a campaign called SWACHAGRAHA. You compost, you grow, you cook, and the cycle continues. We had a lot of people in the city adopting it. We also found the need that not enough people wanted to just use the do-it-yourself methods. We had a host of entrepreneurs that came up for composting kits. We saw a lot of innovation there, and we started promoting all of it. As people started composting at home, they got familiar. They also started looking at the composting solutions installed in their communities. By law, a lot of communities were required to install it, but it had been defunct. They started reviving those. So we had communities after communities now composting their wet waste and creating compost, which they were using in gardens, distributing to residents. But they found that there was a large bulk which was still left over. Another SWMRT colleague who's in really close with soil, she went and met some farmers, asked them to relook at the city compost without any plastic, without any heavy metals contaminations. So the farmers came, they took some samples, they used it to grow food, and as they saw the results, they loved it. More and more farmers started coming, and our city compost from communities started moving back to farmers. From farm to fork, back to farm. We'd achieved a circular economy there. In 2014, I quit work to just give 1 year to waste. At the end of 1 year, the lure of foreign postings or high salaries in IT could no longer attract me. I started with some of my garbage sisters, a company, a social enterprise, to work on what else but waste. So we looked at what do we want to work on, and we found a common enemy, which was the plastic, the single-use disposables. People were using it one time, throwing it, but it was living in the nature for 500 to 800 years. We had seen a campaign by volunteers called Rent a Bag. We thought that was a great alternative, but it had failed. We looked at it, why it had failed, and built a commercial model around it. And when we implemented it in areas, we found it was saving almost 50 to 60% of the plastic bags. It also connected us with plastic haters across the city, and there were so many of them. So media helped. As it carried articles, the news spread, and we got more and more people from more and more communities coming forward to get it implemented in their areas. In one of the wards, we found a health officer. She was extremely proactive. She had spoken to the elected representatives and asked them to ban some of these items which had no destination, which were not getting recycled. We looked at it, we loved it, we supported them with Borrow a Bag, but we also shared the information with our plastic hater group. We'd all come together and we'd called ourselves Bangalore Eco Team. Each one of them took it to their elected representative, to municipality officers in their area. And we had ward after ward marching for plastic ban in their area. With that groundswell, we did get our plastic ban, Karnataka Plastic Ban in 2016. Greenpeace rated it among the best in the world. So why do we call it a plastic ban? What you see is actually we're against single-use disposables, things that you use once and throw it. A plastic bag like this, which is reusable, is just fine in a book. Your bathroom bucket, which is plastic, but you use it again and again, is just fine. What we were against is the plastic cups, the plates, the disposables, which you would eat once and then it would live in the environment for the next 500 to 800 years. We also had a lot of entrepreneurs that came up. So small women SHGs came up, which started making cloth bags. We had volunteer groups who came together and created a BYOC movement. So bring your own cup, bring your own cloth bag. So it had become a really vibrant movement. In that movement, some people started green events where they could give you reusable cutlery. From that came plate banks, where you could borrow steel cutlery and plates if you were having a large party or a function in your house. And we had a vibrant ecosystem of volunteers and entrepreneurs meeting the need of a plastic ban. So now that was taking care of our 80% or the wet waste and the dry waste. We looked at our dustbin again, the one we had ignored earlier, and found that it had primarily three things by volume: sanitary pads, diapers, and of course, the mixed party waste or the disposables cutlery. So the plastic ban had taken care of the third. But if you look at the sanitary pads and diapers, we found that there were sustainable alternatives already existing. There was something that had come from East, which was cloth pads, which were reused. And then there was something that had come from the West, which was a menstrual cup, a cup and a cloth pad. We also saw in the cloth pad an opportunity to create employment. So we trained in small town India called Dharwad, a unit of women who started producing these. As more and more women moved to a cup or a cloth pad, they told other women, and soon it was a nationwide movement of a cup and a cloth pads. And you got cup voted. The minute you got cup voted, you would take to social media and share it with 30 more friends. So this was wonderful, this was great, and yet our composters were suddenly giving us a little trouble. We found that the compost was getting acidic because of citrus peels. The juice shop guys had a problem because who would take their citrus peels? And then when we did research, we found there was a wonderful product called bioenzymes, which people across the world were making. What is a bioenzyme? It's an all-purpose natural cleaner. Made with what else but your citrus peels? We started promoting it and we started doing more research around natural cleaners. We also found that there is a lot of chemicals in our household cleaners, in our personal care cleaners, our shampoos, our soaps, which while they were making us clean, they were making our lakes dirty. Our lakes were frothing, they were catching fires. So we started promoting natural cleaners. We again got a whole ecosystem of entrepreneurs that started making shampoos and soaps at home. So isn't it wonderful? Every time we go a little green, we create more employment. And suddenly you had a big movement around natural cleaners, creating more and more employment. So all done? Not really. With COVID, we've seen COVID waste. We recommend cloth masks, but there is still a lot of work to be done. There is multi-layer packaging. We need packaging which is either recyclable or compostable. There is EPR that needs to come into place to make sure all our dry waste is actually getting recycled. We need, being a vegan is of course, the best for the environment, right? There needs to be more products, more solutions to make it easy for people like me who are still not there to become vegan. So I hope in the next 5 years, I'm going to see a lot of entrepreneurs coming up from among you to create more products and services so that we can create a cleaner and greener world. It's your future we're talking about, and it's time you take charge for it. Thank you.